Hey, y'all, welcome to the WPC Plus. That's the weighted pod created. He is not Burt Reynolds, and as it turns out, neither am I. But I'm Pierre, and he is Nick, and we're here to talk fantasy baseball. In a recurring segment called Three Up, Three Down, we're going to look at a Statcast metric, talk about some risers and fallers and why they matter in fantasy. Now, Nick, I know what the people are thinking. It's only been a week. You're silly for even looking at these things, right? Such a small sample size, but I know you're going to convince me that there is a reason that we're looking at maximum exit velocity this early.
Never too early to look at Statcast, Pierre. Come on. No, it is on. It just kind of depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at stats we've talked about before, like percentage of balls hitting the air over 100 miles per hour, or just average exit velocity of balls hitting the air, or just average exit velocity, which we don't talk a ton about, but some people still do. Those things aren't as actionable early in the season because the sample size is so small that you hit you have a good week and you or good couple games and you hit both of your fly balls are over 100 miles per hour and you have a 100% air percent of balls over 100 miles per hour, and that says you should be the greatest power hitter ever. So obviously the sample size is an issue with things like that, but on max exit velocity, which we're looking at today, that is kind of a different story because you only have to do it once uh, for set a new max, and regardless of sample size, like max exit velocity, because it's a sample of one, is it's still a very good predictor of future power. So early in the season here, we can still glean some value from max exit velocity, even if we're still kind of juggling unknowns with trying to figure out what kind of ball is being used in the majors right now.
And that's a good point. We'll have to discuss that too because there's some talk that, well, maybe everyone's going to be setting new max exit velocity records because the ball is a little, I don't know, I've heard it phrased bouncier or I don't know what you want to call it, but it might be carrying a little bit more. So before we talk about some specific players, the ball seems to change every year. Do you think that to some extent we kind of have to, slow our roll and not read too much into it because, well, maybe just this year is going to be different for everybody in terms of, the StatCast numbers?
So I think that it's it's going to be hard to make like a a fairly accurate overarching statement until we have a fair amount more data. So I'm kind of like I'm not trying to make too many adjustments in my head until smarter people with more math have told me the specifics about how the ball is acting. So I'm not going to look at max EV right now and be like, oh, we need to discount this one because of what the ball could be. Like you said, the phrase being used is it's a bouncier ball, but it's carrying less. Which I saw some Twitter threads today of, like I said, smarter people than me uh, throwing around ideas and looking at what the different wobas are at the different launch angles, and that seems to be where we're seeing some differences. So we can say that the ball is carrying less, that it's been deadened, but it's still quote bouncier. So that stuff will shake out more later. So for right now, I'm looking at max EVs like about as I would every year, and just kind of taking on a case by case basis and looking at the player and looking at the amount of increase compared to what they've done before. So maybe that's the smarter way to do it is just you know I, I don't care as much about like what the actual number is, whether it's 115 or 110 or whatnot, but what kind of jump have these players made from last year to this year?
Yeah, and like you said, we still need to wait to make a judgment on that. But again, we're looking at this from a relative point of view. Maybe everyone's exit velocity is going to go up a little bit, But if these guys are still at the top of that list, right, percentage wise, percentile wise, they're still going to be something worth looking at because they're still hitting the ball harder than everyone else. So let's start with a guy that is just smashing the hell of the ball, and that's Byron Buxton. He's supposed to be a nice source of stolen bases and maybe 20 homers, and right now it looks like he's just going to lead the majors in home runs. And that's Nelson Cruz's job, but Buxton is doing it for him. What do you make of this? Is this just finally, the incarnation of Byron Buxton as savior that we've been waiting for? This is just he decided this is it. This is the year.
I hope so. I mean that's kind of the logical conclusion. Byron Buxton has never been considered anything less than like a superlative. Having superlative tools and skills. It's been about the injuries. It's been about the concussions. It's been about everything else besides what he can actually do on the field when he's on the field, besides play elite defense, what he can do with the bat. I really like Brian. Like he's one of those guys that goes back for me to back to my original fantasy league that one of the first prospects I got really into after the league had been around for a couple years and just burned you over and over again. He just got passed around our league. It's like forever will Byron Buxton be amazing. And we saw it get started last year in 39 games, hit 13 home runs. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but his home run per plate appearance rate was higher than anyone else close to qualified in baseball. And you kind of write that off. You're like, Byron Buxton had himself a little power surge, but he's always had power in unexpected power to go along with some of the best speed and stolen base potential in the majors. So yeah, I think that's what we're seeing everything come together for a guy that is now, God, he's been around forever and he is still he's 27 years old in baseball prime. He's already one of the elite athletes and elite toolboxes in the majors. Now in his physical prime, isn't injured, and is just hitting home runs and going to steal bases. And hopefully he, if he stays healthy, he's going to be like one of the most valuable players in fantasy. He's going to have the same skill sets that we talk about with Randy Arozarena and Luis Robert and all these other power speed outfield combinations. Like that's Buxton's ceiling, and really his ceiling might be beyond those guys. So if he's going to stay healthy all year, I think that's what we're going to get.
Yeah, I mean that's what's crazy is you can't dismiss the fact that his ceiling is MVP. I mean that's it. He could be Ronald Acuna, this year, but
what he was supposed to be before all the injuries.
Exactly.
Byron Buxton was Ronald Acuna coming through the except Acuna popped up really fast. Right. We knew about Buck from the time he was drafted out of high school. We've known about Byron Buxton. It's never been a secret. The tools he's been one of those just wait and see guys. One of the guys, prospect guys, it was always, he was the number one prospect, but there was always a gap between him and, when he was coming through, Xander Bogaerts was the number 2, number 3 guy. And Buxton was considered far and above a better prospect than Bogaerts and the other guys. So yeah, like you said, the ceiling is MVP. The ceiling is what we've seen out of Acuna. So just as a baseball fan, besides just being a fan of Buxton, because he's just, I don't know if you've ever seen any interviews with him or any literature about it. He just seems to be a really nice person. He's very easy to root for. So man, if he stays healthy, the sky's the limit, and everyone that grabbed him at his 90 ADP ish or whatever he was is a lot of those people are going to win leagues because they got a top 10 talent in the 10th round.
That's exactly right. He could be the league winner of this year, and that's the thing is I just I wish I wasn't off of him after 2-3 years in a row of being burned, and You could just only do it so many times. But look, first 19 at bats, he has 3 barrels, 4 homers, and a steal. He's probably going to even steal some more bases if he, stops hitting out of the park. So we'll
Yeah.
see. Well, let's move on to another guy, slightly less well known, but should be fantasy relevant, but in Colorado. So Sam Hilliard, if he could only get regular playing time, who knows? 2020 potential. He is hitting the ball pretty hard so far, in the 99th percentile as far as barrel rate. Now, again, small sample size, but when he's up to bat, he's hitting it pretty hard. 113.5 max exit velocity, and more importantly, 110 fly ball. And again, very very limited sample there. And talk to me a little bit about that. Why we should distinguish fly ball exit velocity, not just overall exit velocity.
Yeah, because overall exit velocity, it doesn't matter much if you how hard you hit it if you're pounding it into the ground. So separating out fly ball exit velocity just tells us how hard you're hitting it in the air, which is the only way you can hit a home run unless you're Byron Buxton. Just are gonna yeah, that's the other thing. Byron Buxton is gonna if he stays healthy, he's probably gonna have like 3 or 4 inside the park home runs because he's just so damn fast. Like that's something that's going to happen. But anyway, enough about Byron Buxton. But so we want to look at the balls that are hitting the air, especially with players that play in the thin-aired wonderland that is Colorado, and that is why it is a small sample of like with balls in the air. He's only hit a couple of them in the air, so yeah, that number is kind of eye popping, and it's going to go down. But it was above average in previous years, but his max EV of 113.5, it's kind of why people have been on Hilliard as a trendy sleepers guy for a couple years. A lot of it is because in 2019 when he first came up, he had a max EV of 114 and an average fly ball. Velocity wasn't great, but it was above average. And he plays in Colorado, so you put those things together, and he kind of has to be on your radar. Unfortunately, he's in Colorado, so that means he only has 13 plate appearances so far, because Colorado's not going to do what you want them to do in regards to who they are going to play. It doesn't matter if those players are playing good. I don't know what the formula is for who gets playing time in Colorado, but it's not skill. That's been apparent for a couple of years. So who knows how much Hilliard's going to play, and that's the frustrating carousel that is rostering Colorado players, is that you see a guy that should be built for fantasy success in Hilliard, given where he plays and how hard he hits the ball, but you can't make any strong estimation about how much he will actually play. So putting a value on him is just impossible.
Yeah, and so unfortunately, just a guy right now to kind of watch. In deeper leagues, you could roster him, but you can't just necessarily roll him out there, in a weekly lineup league and assume he's going to get enough playing time to be valuable. That's the unfortunate thing, but definitely something worth watching. And then let's talk about Carlos Correa. Definitely somebody on the fantasy radar, but you know what? Maybe he's got a little chip on his shoulder. Seems like he's out to prove something. I don't know. I don't know what that could possibly be, but right now, 99th percentile in max exit velocity, hit one at 116.4 miles per hour. Is Carlos Correa just going to, just go ham this year and make the Astros front office cry when he goes somewhere else next year?
Oh man, I hope not, because that'll really take out a lot of my arsenal of jokes, because I've been making uh, jokes about Carlos Correa being a poor man's Screwball Cabrera for a few years now. So if he's good again, that's going to be a real bummer for my Astros jokes. But it is, even as a known Astros hater, it's kind of hard to ignore how hard that he is mashing this year, even though he apparently doesn't know when fastballs are coming anymore. You mentioned his max exit velocity of 116.4. That's the highest it's been since 2016. Back when he was good. His max EV was 118.2. Since then, 2017, 112, then 112.8, 112.8, 109 last year. So, that's 4 years of being down quite a range. And then now coming back this year with 116.4, you have to, even early in this year, you have to pay attention to that because the number is so loud. And what the Astros offense in general is doing right now, he's, uh, I guess if he continues like this, he's going to wildly outperform his draft price, which has kind of dropped back to where I thought it should be. Uh, but he'll make me look foolish this year with my rankings if he keeps hitting the ball as hard as he is.
Yeah, you're such a Cardinals fan. Yeah, look, we've always known he has this potential, but I, I don't know. I honestly I thought the Astros lineup might be down a little bit. Springer gone. Alvarez and Bregman were a little
Yeah,
banged up coming out of the spring. Didn't know how they would start out. Well, I guess we have nothing to worry about. The banging is just it was just for fun. I guess they didn't really need it. Didn't help them at all.
didn't need it at
Um,
all.
and then I know we've done our three up, and before we get to the three down, I know we want to give a special mention here because you're looking at this data and you're like, what is Willy Castro doing here on the exit velocity leaders? But what do you want to say about Castro? Because I'm guessing it's not going to be that he's launching too many balls over the fence.
No, he's not the launch angles aren't quite where you want your power hitters to be, but it's also Willy Castro. So, what were you really expecting about him in terms of power? But he has, started strong at least. Like he hasn't hit a home run, so it's like, how can you get that excited about his exit velocity? But he's actually, he was someone that was interesting coming into this year just because of likely playing time and just kind of gave you, kind of a low budget compiler of someone you can get late in draft at shortstop. But it is kind of funny to, you're looking through all the max exit velocity leaders and they're like, oh, okay, so Giancarlo Stanton is first. Oh, he's first every year. That's great. And then Nelson Cruz second. Not surprising. Carlos Correa, that's pretty surprising, coming in third. And then sandwiched between Correa and Vladimir Guerrero is Willy Castro. Like that's just like you have to at least give a shout out to a guy that's on a list with those guys, and then it goes Vlad, Matt Olson, Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, Pete Alonso. And once again, far above those guys is Willy Castro. So we've got to give him a little bit of love.
Yeah, one of those things is not like the other, that's for sure. Um, yeah, but even the launch angle, like not great to begin with, and the sweet spot percentage, but they're even down from last year, so don't expect a power surge. That's not
No,
what we're saying. But
no
you know
good.
what? Like you said, he's going to be in the lineup every day. Could be at the top of the lineup most days. Get you some decent counting stats, so why not? And then I just quickly want to gloss over Tyler Naquin because he's up there too, but I feel like this just might be a hot stretch, and Jesse Winker comes back, and then there's that. So probably don't empty the Fab wallet, right, for Naquin.
No, I probably wouldn't do that. This is probably just one of those pop up guys. We saw a lot of him in Cleveland, and none of it was very good. So you know, it's great. He's getting an opportunity with Winker hurt, letting him lead off. He had a 7 RBI game 2 days ago, so that's greatly driving his bonkers numbers right now. 4 home runs, 5 runs scored, 13 RBI with a 316 average. Uh, that's pretty decent. And if if you had him on your roster for some reason or banking stats from that this week, then you are amazing. Well done. DFS people, on the other hand, like a lot of people have been catching him on DFS. So yeah, keep as long as he's batting leadoff, he's he'll have some use. He's just not going to be doing that for probably very much longer.
Yeah, I wouldn't even spend the roster spot to add him in season long leagues,
No.
unless you're really hard up or need a replacement for Winker
Yeah,
or whatnot.
deep leagues, NL only, like yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Rides from Naquin, but
yeah. All right, let's get to the three down. Let's start with a guy I've been down on all preseason, so this confirms my bias. Now, of course, one swing could change all this, but as of right now, Anthony Rizzo has not been hitting the ball particularly hard. 102.5 max exit velocity, down 12 from last year, and 85.3 in the fly ball exit velocity. I'm pretty much down on the whole Cubs offense, anyways. But I mean, do you feel like Rizzo is kind of continuing this decline? Or do you think there's a turnaround coming?
I don't like. I wasn't super low on him going into this year. He was a guy that was, I thought, priced about appropriately, but that was just too high for me, and a lot of that was just I I didn't like a lot of the first basemen in the top 100 range, and he was going I think around like pick 90, pick 100, kind of just a boring like what you're gonna get with Rizzo. So seeing these early struggles is not great, especially when you given that he is he's 31 now, and so you see a big exit velo dips in guys over 30, and so you immediately like knee jerk reaction of he's washed, he's an old man, he can't find his old man strength. We need to ship him out. I think he'll be fine. Like you, I'm also down on the Cubs offense and had next to zero shares of really any of them for a variety of reasons. So I think I think he hit a home run tonight. Yeah, he did. 2 for 4 today with a solo home run. So looks
Well, there
like you're
goes
already
that.
wrong, Pierre.
Great.
So sorry about that. But yeah, he's just I think he's a boring guy. There's not a lot of ups. Like his ceiling is kind of what his draft price was, and I hate guys like that. Like I hate. We've talked about this before. I hate drafting guys whose ceiling I think is what I'm paying for them. So
Yeah,
yeah,
but you're not going to make
bounce
a
back,
profit.
but not. Yeah, like it's the profit window is so little. Like it's a narrow edge, and that's how I kind of felt with Rizzo. Like you needed him to do a kind of a reasonable imitation of what he's done in previous years, and that did he batted at like a 225, 222 average in 2020, and you got to expect that to bounce back. But you need that from Rizzo. You need him if Anthony Rizzo does not bat 280 minimum, like you're probably going to be struggling because asking once again it'll depend on what we see about this whole dead and ball situation, but he was one of those guys I worried about because I already kind of was worried about I knew I was getting for average. I didn't like the other counting stats just because I didn't like the team's offensive situation with runs RBI, but I thought the days of Anthony Rizzo hitting 25 plus home runs was we were past that, and but he still hit 11 last year. So you're like, okay, like maybe we are still in that range. Like if he gives me a 285 average and 25 home runs and whatever counting stats I can scrounge off of those Wiley Cubs, then that will be fine. But like that's what you have to get. So seeing like immediately large exit velocity decreases as a Rizzo owner, I am shopping him, trying to sell someone else on his bounce back.
If you were a Rizzo owner, which you probably aren't.
Yeah,
I'm
like I
not.
would be.
But of course, the ball he hit tonight probably went about 130 miles per hour. So
Yeah,
forget
everything
everything.
has changed now. He's down in top 1%. So
Yeah, exactly.
wrong.
No. No, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. This guy, I wouldn't be surprised if he met his projections, but I would be if he exceeded them, even by more than a little bit. So that, like you
If he
said,
hits 30 home runs, like I'd be
yeah,
floored. Like obviously because he hasn't done it since 2017, but
right.
like even over 20, if he does anything past 25, like that's a lot of Anthony Rizzo gravy, and I don't know. I'm doubtful.
I am definitely doubtful too. All right, so let's stay at first base, but let's go back to the Rocky Mountains. And CJ Cron was definitely a popular sleeper. Definitely a guy that a lot, especially including some of the guys on the RotoBaller staff, thought was going to be a hugely profitable player wherever he was going. 40 homer upside in course. So far, unless he just hit a grand slam as I'm speaking, which is possible, but so far, no hard hit balls over 100 miles per hour. And just, the power surge hasn't come. Now, again, granted, it's been a week, but I feel similar situation because down on the Cubs offense in general, you have to be down on the Rockies in general just because they don't know what they're doing as far as who's playing where. Arenado's gone. It just seems like kind of a dumpster fire in the front office. So who knows what's going on there. So I wasn't feeling him. I'll tell you, I didn't take him anywhere. So far, he hasn't done anything to, prove that wrong. But I think you're probably a little higher on him. Do you feel like it's coming? He's kind of has to ease into things.
Yeah, I'm not extraordinarily worried. Like I really like CJ Cron. I have a lot of him on teams, but it's all like early Cron. It's pre-signing with Colorado Cron when he
Uh,
was, had an ADP of over 300, and I liked him even if he had re-signed with Detroit. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll take him at
yeah,
the back of every draft.
lottery ticket Cron.
I Yeah, lottery ticket Cron worked out great. I don't have much of the you actually have to pay like retail prices for CJ Cron. Like it got kind of crazy in the last couple weeks of the draft season. I was seeing like minimum picks of people taking him like around pick 100. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
even I am not going to get that extreme. So it's not great that they start with a series at home in Colorado and he's put up a whole bunch of junk. Granted, the first series was against the Dodgers and their pitching is good, so
yeah.
that's a little less worrisome. And then he went 1 for 9 against the Diamondbacks and then didn't start today. So there's not much excuses there. Exit velos are terrible, like scary terrible. But his you look at his average launch angle, he has a -3 launch angle right now. He's pounding. He's decided to he's decided to pound the ball into the ground this year inexplicably. I don't think that's going to continue. I I I think we're going to see he's going to get more balls up in the air and he'll be fine. Like playing in Colorado is a fantastic panacea for healing what ails you. So yeah, he's we've talked about this before. The reason I like Cron so much is because his exit velocities have been elite for like 3 years now, and have even last year in the injury shortened year they were even better than they had been the year before. So I don't think it, even though he's 30 31 now, like I don't think he fell off the age cliff and can't hit the ball hard anymore. I think he's still going to smash lasers, and eventually those will start leaving the park in Colorado.
Yeah, and unless you drafted him way early, like you did,
Didn't
then
panic.
it's a little too early to give up. Maybe you can keep him bench for a little while, but like I said, they're facing the Dodgers. I think he can get a little bit of a pass, so he'll probably start smashing it pretty soon. Um, but for our last one here, this is the part of the show where you try to convince panicked owners not to rage drop Keston Hiura because he costs a pretty penny in drafts and, considered top three second baseman. We're expecting 30 homers, some steals. And yeah, he doesn't have a hard hit ball over 100 miles per hour. I don't know, has he actually hit or made contact with the ball yet this season? We have to look that up.
I'm not sure. I think it's mostly just whiffs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, contact rate of 0%. No, it's not a contact rate of 0%, but it's got to be close. Like he is.
It feels
Uh,
like it.
yeah, I'm panic. Panicked Hiura owners are not going to be encouraged by anything I have to say. I have never really got the whole Hiura craze. I get that he came up initially in 2019 and hit 19 home runs and stole 9 bases, and we're like power, speed, like this is the new, like this is a new elite second baseman. Except what we saw in that small sample was dramatically different than really a lot of what we had seen in the minors. Like he had a small window of success in the minors too. Like 2019 was an excellent year for Keston Hiura, and we haven't seen much of anything like it since. He hit a whole mess of home runs last year, 13 home runs, and this shortened season in 59 games. So that pace is for over 30 in a full season. But man, he batted 212, and like I don't he just he's always struck me as like this exaggeration, but it's like a 20 hit tool guy. That's what it's like. He had that great 2019 and he batted over 300, but his xBA was 249, and his other like hit rate statistics just weren't that spectacular. And to be like where to return the value that he's being drafted these past 2 years in fantasy, he needs to not just like return a respectable batting average and give you the power. He needs to steal bases too, and that's something that he didn't do as much as we you would have liked to have. Like he stole some bases in the minors, but like handfuls at like every stop, and he gets to the majors and has that brief outburst, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's a 20 stolen base guy." I don't think he ever has been. I think that is being aggressive on what you can expect from him. So now it's just, man, I don't think the Brewers are that good. I don't think their offense is that good, along with the rest of the NL Central. He can't make contact. If you can't make contact, it's going to be really hard to hit home runs, obviously, or get on base to steal bases. So I don't know. I'm glad that I don't have any shares of him, because I don't have a lot of optimism for how the rest of the season is going. Like this is not the batting. Obviously, you don't want anyone to start the season batting zero, but when we were already worried about the big time contact issues that he showed from last year, starting off a season this way, it's just like throwing up your hands, like okay, what are we gonna do now?
And that's the thing is it's the strikeouts. I get if you're a power guy or hit 30 plus homers, the strikeout rate will be a little bit higher. It was already pretty high last year. I think it was well over 30%. If correct me if I'm wrong there.
34.6 with a
Okay.
20.3 swinging strike last year.
Wow.
And
Okay.
he's
And
at 50.
and it's getting worse. Somehow it's getting worse. Like
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And he's getting to Joey Gallo strikeout territory, but without that level of power. Like it's just that's not
Yeah.
his ceiling. So
He looks like he looked kind of. He hit a lot of home runs last year, but in the bats where he didn't hit home runs, he looked lost and was just a big whiffer. And that he was like this year, he started with a 50% strikeout rate with a 27% swinging strike rate. Like that's not just Gallo-esque. That's Miguel Sano and Joey Gallo had just a half-blind love child that can't see anything. That is like I don't until he looks a little less lost. Like I see little reason for optimism. So sorry, Hero owners.
yeah, it's like Pete Incaviglia esque, and nobody else knows who that is for this world. But
We're
yeah,
old, we know.
you got that. You got that. All right. All right. Well, yeah. So things aren't looking too good for Hira, but don't drop him yet. If you can
It's still April. You'll totally be fine. Just yeah.
temper
Oh
expectations.
yeah. There's still plenty of hope and expectations at this point in the fantasy season.
There you go. If nothing else, you can always cling to hope. That's like a warm blanket.
Yeah.
All right, so that's been our look at max exit velocity. As the season stretches on, we'll start to look at some things that are, going to be a little more tangible to wrap our heads around because they'll mean a little bit more. But we will be back next week with something interesting for you. And of course, check out our other edition. We talked about pitcher risers and fallers based on Statcast metrics. We're going to be here all season long to help you win. That's our goal. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.